Well, good evening, everyone. Michael Soothing here. I'm going to be gone on travel for about a week and a half, so I wanted to make a video first and talk about the space and astronomy topic. I have here a photograph from the Hubble Space telescope, the first photograph of a black hole. I think it's that part, don't you? And so I wanted to show you the first black hole. You're getting reflections, but anyway, it's interesting to me because Einstein's equations always predicted these, but this is the first one that's actually been photographed by the Deep Field Hubble Space Telescope. And if you aren't real familiar with black holes, they are so dense and have such strong gravity that they suck everything into them. Even light can't escape from them. And so perhaps you've had a relationship like that in your past. But anyway, I think now that we see black holes actually do exist, we have a very good explanation of where all the brains of flat earthers got off to, right? So anyway, never mind that. I got for my birthday, I've loved astronomy my whole life, and I got this book from Chelsea, and I haven't had a chance yet to peruse through it. So I thought we could do that together. But I'm not going to do my usual thing where I clumsily hold this up to the camera and talk about it, because many of you have made the very astute observation that I should be pointing the camera down at the subject matter I'm reading. It would make it easier for them to follow. So I'm going to reorient the camera and do that very thing. Also, you might like the sounds better of the pages and things like that. So pardon me for a moment while I reorient, and then we'll start perusing through the Backyard Astronomer's Guide. Hold on. Alright, so I think we have it in view. Just about right. Let's find out what's in this big, thick book that, of course, I glanced through it when I got it for the birthday, but I haven't checked it all out yet. And I am fascinated to find out what's in here. Astronomy, getting started right. You know, I've been fascinated. Even when I was a small child, we would go to the planetarium down in LA and look at celestial objects. I think I have to move this just a little bit so you can see all of it. There we go. Now we've got it. Now we've got it fixed up. I see lots of interesting chapters. They start with choosing equipment, binoculars, telescopes, and that kind of thing. Essential accessories and eyepieces and filters. Maybe someday, if I start doing advanced photography, astronomical photography, which is not so easy on the Oregon coast, since the sky is always obscured by rain. But I think we're going to skip some of the equipment stuff and move on to see how the North Star just stays in one spot as the Earth revolves, because the axial tilt of the Earth points directly at it. And so in the Northern Hemisphere, the stars circle in, I think it's a counterclockwise direction, and in the Southern Hemisphere in a Did I get a fingerprint on there? Anyway, naturalists of the night. If you're going to be an astronomer, you're going to be out in the freezing cold unless you're in a nice warm area like the Nevada desert. One time I was in Nevada, out in the middle of nowhere, and I got out of my car, my rental car. I was going to China Lake, from China Lake, which is a big desert area for aerospace, going to Las Vegas in the middle of a giant canyon, and it was totally black, and it was very hot, even though it was night, about 95 degrees. I got out of my car and just looked at the sky for almost an hour. It was amazing. Saw falling stars, which we call meteors, right? Until they're on the ground, then they're called meteorites. Binoculars for the beginner and the serious observer. So you can just take binoculars, and if they're good ones, and you can look at Jupiter and see the moons of Jupiter, some of the brighter ones, for example, which is interesting. You can see great features on the moon with binoculars. So it says, consider the Hubble binocular, right? Celestial showcase. Naked eye shows what you can see. A few nebula, a few variable stars, eclipses, etc. The Milky Way, of course. 5 planets you can see with your naked eye. With binoculars, you can see star clouds on the Milky Way, Earth shine on the moon, planetary motion, bright comets, and all kinds of other stuff. Details of constellations, the moons of Jupiter. You can actually see this a little bit with good binoculars, some of them, yeah. So as I mentioned, many of the craters of the moon, variable stars, star clusters, galaxies, nebulas, 7 of the planets, right? Sunspots, but do not ever look at the sun with binoculars, okay? You'll be blinded. Telescope. With telescopes, you can see double and multiple stars. Stars that are pairs, twins. This is just weird shadows from the tripod, by the way. Nothing mysterious in the book, okay? Let's skip around so you can just relax while you do this, right? Doesn't it look relaxing to just look at the sky? But never look at the sun. Don't let any of your optical instruments get pointed at the sun. Ooh, here's some giant binoculars right there. You have to have special filters. Anti-reflective coatings are good. You need solar filters if you're going to look at the sun. I'm jealous of some of these telescopes. I don't have this kind. I have this kind. I did a video about it sometime, and I've seen some cool stuff through it. But if you have one of these, a reflecting mirror telescope, I should say, that's got an electronic control, you can punch in an object and it will just point to it, and you'll be able to see it, whatever you're looking for, because it knows where everything is in the sky at any given moment. So they show a history of telescopes here. This is going to be really interesting to read later. proven performer. Here's an old ad from long ago in some magazine. Photos that people took in black and white, Jupiter and Saturn. So, the people that don't believe any of the planets are real, there are actually hundreds of thousands of amateur astronomers who have nothing to do with NASA or any government agency, who go out and look at this stuff all the time. One of the 8 trillion ways that you can tell that flat earthers are mental patients, but anyway, proofs of the solar system, the globe, and the universe that we reside within, the galaxy. They tell you how to choose a telescope, depending on what you want to do. I'm going to take mine someday out to the desert, see what I can spot. Signs of a good starter scope. Yeah, alright. Sometime we'll talk about telescopes and things if I get some photography going, but let's move past all. Well, they go into huge detail on how to do filters and eyepieces, what kind of telescope to get depending on what you want to do. Look at all these filters. Essential accessories, okay? So, that's interesting to me. I used to do a lot of photography in the old days, back when you used film. Most of you don't remember those old days, but I had to learn how to take a good picture the first time, because it was very expensive to develop all your film. You couldn't just take 100 shots and weed out the 2 or 3 good ones. You had to learn to make every shot count before digital photography. But you see, wow, this is like 100+ pages already on telescopes. It tells you how not to set up a telescope, so you can see all the things required. Oh, they've got some tips here on how to calibrate them. Very good. Nighttime use. I wonder if you were in a big high-rise building, if people buy these to spy on the people in the other high-rise buildings. I'll bet you they do. Of course, I would never do anything like that myself. Did you ever see that Jimmy Stewart movie where he's looking across it? It's an Alfred Hitchcock film. I can't remember the name of it. And he's a photographer. He's got binoculars and he sees a murder in the window of the building across the courtyard. And he's stuck in a wheelchair because he got injured. What's the name of that film? It's called... I can't remember, but one of you great subbies of mine is going to tell me the name of that film. Look, Satellites and Space Stations. Of course, as you know, I worked on dozens of satellite programs over decades. Most of them were geostationary or geosynchronous. So they're in orbit around the Earth above the equator, about 22,000 miles away. Approximately 10% of the distance from here to the moon. Iridium flares. These are really cool to see, but you won't be able to see them much longer. These are satellites in a low Earth orbit. But unfortunately, they're upgrading the system. I guess that's good if you're an iridium user, but they're upgrading to new satellites, and the old ones are going to get deorbited. So they go out and find these while you can. You'll be looking at a spot in the sky, and it will suddenly flash really bright and then disappear. It's their reflective solar arrays that do it. And, there's 60 of these. They were put up in the 1990s. And some are going to be deorbited and burned up in the atmosphere. But anyway, these are only 780 kilometers up, which is about 500 miles or so, in low Earth orbit. And the antennas act as flat mirrors. Not the arrays, sorry, the antennas, creating a brief but intense flash of light. You can go to a website called Heavens Above. I'll try to remember to link it in the description, and you can see what visible satellites will pass over your area on any given cloudless night that you could see with your eyes or binocular. It tracks the International Space Station, iridium flares, things like that. I think this is the ISS going across. No, wait, that's the moon going across the face of the sun. Phenomena of the dark sky. Falling stars of summer. A brilliant Perseid meteor streaks down the summer Milky Way. That's coming up in not too long. The Perseids meteor shower. It says here, about 1,000 tons of dust and rock enter the Earth's atmosphere every day. A particle the size of a sand grain produces a typical meteor, called a falling or shooting star by non-astronomers, as it penetrates the atmosphere and incinerates. If you wish upon this falling star, your wish will come true and... Oh, wait. It doesn't say that. Sorry. It's just a book on astronomy, okay? Not fantasy. Meteor storms and outbursts. Every now and then, meteors get angry and they have an outburst. See there? Here's a meteor so bright you could see it in daylight. While driving along a freeway near Niagara Falls, amateur astronomer John Normey saw a brilliant fireball meteor streak across the daytime sky. He quickly pulled over and photographed the scene, then used drawing software to sketch in the fireball. Hey, that's not fair. No sketching. Look, the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. I saw this once on a flight, a plane flight, an airline flight that went from New York to Europe over a polar, semi-polar route over Greenland and over the Arctic Circle. And it was quite a show. I watched it for about 3 hours because it was night when we were flying that route. The one I saw there was a lot of green, and these shimmering waves would come down out of the sky over and over. It was fascinating. Ionic charged particles from the solar wind being caught by the ionosphere. The best dark sky sight, the Milky Way. This is how you can see at night. On a clear night in a very dark area, the Milky Way. We happen to be positioned perfectly out on a spiral arm of the Milky Way, way out here. And because we're way out here on a spiral arm, we can not only see the Milky Way, but we can see the rest of the universe, which is quite interesting. Do you know that if our sun and our solar system was in here someplace, where the vast majority of the stars are in the Milky Way, we would see virtually none of the universe. We wouldn't even know the size and scope of it, because we would be essentially blinded by nothing but a star field around us. I know that sounds far-fetched, but it's true. So, be glad you're in exactly the right spot on our planet, or our planets, and our solar system is in exactly the right spot for us to be able to observe the amazing creation of the universe. All right. Let's see what else we have. Observing conditions. Your sight and light pollution. You have to get away from city light. The eroding sky. You thought only human emissions from burning of fossil fuels was causing trouble, but see, there's light pollution. Look there. Do you notice that South Korea is all lit up at night, but North Korea has no lights at all? Yeah. Or is that Japan? Okay, anyway, that might be Japan. Yeah, I think we have to go further over to see the Korean Peninsula. But look it up on the internet and you'll see. That's a bad observing site, but it's a good place to take your girlfriend when you're first dating, to look over the city lights of LA or wherever this is. Okay. This is a thermal or infrared graphic or something. Let's move on and see if we can find, oh look, the moon. Some people say, well, not some people, some nutballs say the moon is lit from inside and isn't reflecting sunlight. But you see, if that was the case, then you wouldn't have shadows in all the craters that are only caused by the sun lighting it from this direction. You also wouldn't have the moon phases, which, if you know how to do it, I'll show you sometime. You can replicate with a little ball outside at a time when the moon is up during daylight. If you're ever confused about, like, how come I can see the sun on one side of the sky, the moon on the other, but it's a crescent, I'm going to show you why sometime. You take a ball on the ground that's shiny, line it up perfectly with the moon, and then you'll see that it will show you the exact same phase from the sun as what the moon is showing you. Anyway, solar observing. I've looked at sunspots on the sun using super duper, extremely dark eclipse filters and things. Like I said, be so cautious if you're going to do that. If you're old like me, you've been lucky enough to see several comets that were visible with the naked eye in our lifetime, back in the 90s and early 2000 time frame. There were several. There was the Tuttle comet. Let me see if they list them here. This is Comet McNaught, January 2007. But that was in the Southern Hemisphere. But we saw several other ones. One had a double tail. Oh, Hale Bob. You know, there was a crazy cult where the guy took all of his followers and had them drink the poison Kool-Aid so that they would all transform themselves to the giant UFO that was behind Hale Bob. The guy had the Heaven's Gate cult. Now we have people with the same mentality. This was the other one I saw with the naked eye. Comet Hyakutake, I think is kind of how you pronounce that. That was one, and there was another one also. But it was quite impressive. Here's another view of Hale Bob. You can kind of see the bluish purple tail that goes this way, as well as the brighter part of it going this way. It had a straight blue gas tail and a curving white dust tail. So it was quite interesting to see, especially through binoculars or a telescope. Weird and wonderful comets of the 21st century. Can't remember, I've seen at least one more that was visible with the naked eye. A comet tail, what's this one? Let's see, this one, it's not telling me. 2002, Ikea Zhang. Don't know if that was Northern Hemisphere. Are you aware that in the Southern Hemisphere you see a completely different set of stars as in the Northern Hemisphere? One of the many ways we know for certain we reside on a globe. Here's Saturn. And the rings would appear in a different... Well, if you look at the moon from the Southern Hemisphere, it will look upside down to you. Although that's an arbitrary way to say it, because there's not really a down and an up in the Northern and Southern Hemisphere. We just show it that way on maps. Down is always towards the center of mass of any planet or round celestial object. Down is always an inward direction because that's the center of mass. So when we say up and down, it's rather arbitrary. For the people in the Southern Hemisphere, they could say our moon is upside down. But you see, the way we see the moon, we get to see the man in the moon, and they see him upside down. Here's Mars, a Hubble portrait of Mars back in 2001. The Hubble telescope took this photo. You know, the Hubble had bad optics at first because someone made a huge error and forgot to convert to the metric system, or vice versa, on the way one of their mirrors was ground. So they actually had to fly a mission to fix it many years later. They had to fit it with another lens that would correct for that. Jupiter. Yeah, Jupiter's interesting. Do you remember the comet that got broken up and impacted into Jupiter in pieces? I don't know if they'll show that here. And of course, Jupiter was the star of the famous film 2001, A Space Odyssey. You thought the star was Hal, the computer, but really it was Jupiter and the black monolith. And whatever drug people took to watch that film. Jupiter's 4 major satellites, meaning moons: Io, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto. Those are the ones you can see with binoculars or a telescope. Here is one of the moons of Jupiter casting a shadow on the face of Jupiter. And which one is this? Which moon is it? It's a photo from the Hubble Space Telescope. Rare Saturn events. An extremely rare passage of Saturn in front of a bright star was captured in 1988. The ringed planet's seldom seen white spot was observed in 1990. There's the white spot. And I guess that's the bright star. I'm not sure. This shows some orbital paths and things of the moons, Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn has some moons that you can see also. Titan, which is really quite large. It's 5,000 kilometers in diameter and quite bright. Orbits Saturn over a period of 16 days. Anyway, finding your way around the sky. Things pointing with a laser. This will get into how you can read the constellations and figure out the celestial roadmap. So this will be a really interesting section to take a look at. Later on, when I want to delve more deeply into some of the star constellations that I'm not as familiar with. View from Earth by day. There's actually an app that you can put on your phone. Oh, my phone is charging. I was going to show you where you can point anywhere in the sky and it will show you the constellations and things like that. It knows by GPS the position of all the stars, and that's a great little app to have. Path of the planets, a wobbling Earth. You know, the North Star didn't used to be the North Star. It moved into position over a period of a few hundred years. And a few hundred years from now, there'll be because we're not pointed perfectly toward it. In a few hundred more years, it will be a different star. It shifts a little bit. In fact, it's not absolutely stationary in the sky now. It's got a slight wobble to it because it's not perfectly north from our axis. But nonetheless, look. Men, Monsters, and the Modern Universe. 2 books in one. Are they trying to sell me books here? Oh no. They're just giving examples. Let's see what else we can find. Exploring the deep sky. I'd like to do some of that someday. Exploring the deep sky. Wouldn't you like to look at really interesting galaxies that are billions of light years away? You know, the interesting thing about that is when you look at starlight or galaxies, you're actually looking into the past, because what you're seeing happened thousands or millions or billions of years ago. We don't get to see the present out there, only the past. Maybe someday someone will come up with a good time machine by breaking the sound barrier. But you know what? I don't think that will happen. Okay, Let's see. Herschel Dynasty. I'm gonna speed it up just a tiny bit because I'm on a limited time budget today. I can let this video be about 40 minutes long. Then I have to do a quick edit and upload before I sleep, to leave early in the morning for our trip that we're taking. Many different galaxies, twin dust lanes, deep sky tour beyond the Milky Way, the galaxy zoo. I wish we had more time to look at all this together. There's so many interesting objects in the night sky. I have to get a sip of water. You guys have asked, some of you have asked me to do a whisper video. And I promised to do one soon because my allergies are going to dictate it. I'm right by the microphone, by the way. That's why you can hear this so well. See, ear to ear stereo. Like that. Or maybe I should do the water sounds. Anyway, I will do an ear to ear. I will do a whisper video in the future, but most people prefer soft spoken. You can't please all the people all the time. I'm also getting asked to do gumshoe videos and others. I promise I'll get to all of it. I mean, not every request. I'm getting all kinds of requests. Somebody asked for a tour of the Tillamook region on the Oregon coast, or a description or narration. I will get to talking about that, I hope, sometime, because we went there recently. We went to the big dairy factory there where they make the famous Tillamook cheese and ice cream and all that kind of thing. You can hear my voice is getting tripod subjects. Big fancy tripod with this camera. Sometimes they're a tracking tripod so that it will keep your object in view if you want to do a long time lapse. But that's pretty technical. I think we'll go beyond that and see what else is in here, since we already talked a little bit about how complex it is to use instrumentation to photograph and video. Look, they even talk about how to process your images, see? Advanced imaging, or in parentheses, how to spend lots of money. You know, I can manage to do that without astronomical observations. How about you? High-tech astronomy. I'm jealous of this particular one. But like I said, I don't live in an area where it's easy to use equipment like this. Not out in the desert. Let's see if they have anything more on the planets. North Celestial Pole. Our magnetic pole doesn't precisely line up with the celestial pole, and the celestial pole, the North Star Polaris, is not actually perfectly positioned along the axis of the Earth, so it actually does move a little bit. But the rest of the stars, of course, as you get further from the axis, move in larger and larger circles. Opposite directions, of course, in the northern hemisphere versus the Southern Hemisphere. What else do we have? Oh, look. It's the flat Earth right there. See? I knew they'd have that in this book somewhere. Optics. This is going into really advanced techniques for how you can photograph objects at a great distance and what you have to do to correct for things like collimation, tube currents, atmospheric turbulence, pinched optics. Wouldn't you hate to be an optic that got pinched? I wouldn't want to be pinched if I was an optic. What you don't want to see, spherical aberration. You don't want that. You don't want astigmatism, not in your eyeballs and not in your photographs. You don't want mixed aberrations either. I could make a comment about that, but I won't. Because this is a family channel. The Milky Way Atlas. All about the Milky Way. Nebula colors. Wasn't there a Blondie tune where she talked about nebula and things? I believe there was. Hurry up and wait, something or other. Cygnus, Lyra, Vulpicula, and Sagitta. Milky Way Atlas. I gotta check this later and see what's out there that I haven't taken a look at first. I've seen Cassiopeia and some of these others. I've seen Perseus, but I haven't seen everything. Gemini, Taurus, Gemini, the bull. No, Taurus, the bull. Sorry about that. Like I said, there's an app for your phone that's free that you can download. I'll try to remember to put it in the description what that is, if I can. Lupus. I thought that was a bad disease. So hopefully that's not a diseased portion of the sky. Epilogue. The universe awaits. Throughout the Backyard Astronomer's Guide, we have tried to emphasize certain aspects of recreational astronomy that are often glossed over by other guidebooks. For example, we have talked in specific detail about equipment and brand names. I think that's really good because then you can get really helpful clues as to what kind of equipment exactly you need for certain things. Look at these solar flares and things. That would be interesting to be able to spot. Astronomers at work. Lunar observing. Have you ever been a lunatic? Hopefully not. Hopefully you can observe the moon without being a lunatic. Or lunartic, as they say. Look, it's the Big Dipper, pointing up to Polaris there. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's about all we have time for today, because I have to do a quick edit and upload and hit the rack. So everyone, I hope this video relaxed and put you to sleep. Take care, don't ASMR and drive, and enjoy life. It's too short to be uptight, alright? Bye-bye.